Good evening. Sorry to interrupt such great conversation over such lovely food, but we are here for a reason before we can get back into the conversation and the good food and drinks as well. So good evening and welcome to tonight's Built Environment Dinner and Debate. My name is Ben Stockwood and I'm CEO of the Australian Institute of Landscape Architects, and I will be the moderator for this evening's debate. To begin with, I would like to give a heartfelt acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting this evening, the Larrakia people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging as the custodians of the lands, waters and seas in the area we now call Darwin. Connection to country is a core value of all of those involved in the built environment, as we learn from traditional owners to ensure that we work with country and not against it. Firstly, I would like to thank our generous partners for this evening's event, Bondor Matekno. The Bondor Matekno Group consists of Bondor Business and Matekno PIR businesses that has operated in Australia since the 1950s. They are Australia's only manufacturer, distributor and installer of the most common globally accepted core materials, providing insulated sandwich panels and delivering energy efficiency and structural integrity. The group has 9 manufacturing locations across Australia and an NATA accredited research and development and testing facility in Brisbane. This evening they are proudly represented by Jeff Marsden, General Manager of Bondor Matekno Group. So Jeff, where are you? Please raise your hand. Make sure you catch up with him. Thank you. And also Barry Fitzharris, who's State Manager of South Australia and Northern Territory. Where are you, Barry? Yep, thank you. Thank you. And thanks so much for your support tonight. I would also like to acknowledge my colleagues from the Royal Architects Institute of Australia, the wonderful Karen Ralph, who's done an amazing job pulling together this evening. She's done an amazing work, so thank you, Karen. Ably supported by General Manager Chapters Emma Moore. Both of you have worked so hard to bring tonight to fruition, so thank you very much. Also present this evening are AILA NT Chapter President Fiona Edelsten. Thank you. The Royal Architecture Institute of Australia Chapter Co-Presidents Julie Colgan and Steve Huntingford. Same again, raise your hand please. Excellent. And representatives from the other built environment associations within the Northern Territory who have contributed questions towards this evening's debate. So if you're part of this organisation, please raise your hand so we can find you later on. So first of all, Engineers Australia. I think I met Simon earlier. Where's Engineers Australia? I think there we got one. I don't know where Simon is, thank you. Housing Industry Association. Design Institute Association. National Women in Construction. Doing an amazing job. I'm going to do a slight detour here. My daughter, 16, has just started work experience on construction. She used a nail gun for the first time yesterday and it's her best day ever. She couldn't be happier. So you've got you have one coming your way very soon. We have representatives from the Planning Institute of Australia. Representatives from the Urban Development Institute of Australia. Thank you. Ventura Housing. That's what we like to see. The Australian Institute of Property Management and Community Housing Industry Australian. Thanks to you all for your support, both of tonight and to the built environment in the Northern Territory more broadly. I would also like to acknowledge, of course, the special guests we have in attendance this evening and thank them for their time, but more importantly, their interest in joining us tonight. So our guests of honour, Chief Minister Eva Lawler, and Opposition Leader Leah Finocchiaro. We're also very pleased to have other leaders from the government present this evening, the Honourable Mark Monaghan and the Honourable Joel Bowden. Thank you, Joel. Sorry, Bowden, thank you. Thank you again. And of course, thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. Your interest is great. We've topped 100 and I think we've even had a couple try and sneak in this evening as well. It really is great testament to the importance you all place upon the long-term role infrastructure plays in securing the nation's future and importantly within the Northern Territory. And also in the specific unique placemaking at a local level. So to have so many join us this evening. And indeed it has never been more important than it is now. Recent research from the Housing Industry Association reveals that to meet the current housing demand across Australia, a new home will need to be built every 2.5 minutes. This is without a doubt an incredible statistic. But of course, infrastructure is much more than just houses. It's about the creation of livable and thriving communities. It's about large-scale infrastructure that support these communities, all done in the context of climate change resilience and climate change mitigation. It's about ensuring community protection through design quality, sustainable employment, and long-term skills and training pathways. The Northern Territory and Australia more broadly require these essential components to ensure continued sustainable economic and business growth. There's little surprise then that in the middle of an election campaign, the Territory's two leaders have prioritised the built environment and infrastructure for their first public debate of the election campaign. Whatever the result is on the 24th of August, all of us present here this evening can take heart that these two leaders treat this topic with the utmost seriousness. And thank you. All right, before we begin the fun stuff, I do need to welcome the two leaders to the stage. A few housekeeping and procedural matters. Bathrooms are located out the doors and to your left. Seriously, to the left. It's a bit of a hike, so if you keep going, you're not getting lost, just keep going. In the unlikely event of an emergency, exit points are located at the end of the room. Go down the stairs and the meeting point is in the car park. The format for this evening is as follows. I will shortly invite both leaders to the stage to outline their big picture vision for infrastructure in the Northern Territory in the next term of government. We then have a series of questions on notice from the associations within this room. I will direct firstly to the Chief Minister and then to the Opposition Leader, and taking turns in order for the remainder of the evening. Each leader has 3 minutes to address each question. A bell will ring at the halfway mark. Wonderful. And a more insistent bell will ring at the conclusion of 3 minutes. All right. Unfortunately, this evening we did not have time to ask all questions to our two leaders. There were, I think, 27, 28 in total, and will be here till tomorrow, I believe. However, both leaders have generously agreed to answer any unasked questions this evening in writing after tonight. We really greatly appreciate that effort. Thanks again. And now to begin, I would like to invite the Chief Minister, Eva Lawler, and the Opposition Leader, Leah Finocchiaro, to the stage to begin tonight's debate. Thank you. So to begin this evening, I'll direct the first response to Eva. So Eva, what's the big picture vision of infrastructure for your government to ensure improved livability and environmental and economic sustainability for all Territorians?
Well, first of all, I'll start by acknowledging the Larrakia people on whose land we meet on a beautiful dry season day in the Northern Territory today. It's probably one of the things, when you're in a room of experts, probably Leah and I are the least knowledgeable people around all of these topics, so please bear with us. And having spent many years as a teacher, also you realise there'll be plenty of people in this room who are, as I said, far more knowledgeable than us. But I was the Infrastructure Minister for about 5.5 years, and it was an absolute pleasure to work with many of you that are in this room. Our government has been fortunate enough to govern for 8 years in the Northern Territory, and obviously we look forward to another 4 years. I firmly believe that we have done the hard yards, we've done the heavy lifting, all of those cliches, but we have put the Territory in a very solid position. We've spent nearly $11 billion of cash that's gone out our door that has helped industries like you. Architects, I think we've spent in the last 12 months $65 million through DIPL going to architectural firms in the Northern Territory. But our vision is one of a tropical capital city. It's one of a vibrant Northern Territory. It's one where we see our remote communities thrive. It's one where we have people accessing their homelands and thriving in their homelands. We have done, as I said, a lot of the heavy lifting around the policy work that has been needed to be done. We have done the work around planning reforms. We have done the upgrades and the work around the Building Act, the bringing land to market. We established Infrastructure Northern Territory, and there's some Infrastructure Northern Territory staff here. We have been able to deliver $1 billion worth of remote housing. We have been able to then get more money for the Territory, another $4 billion for the Territory for housing. We have a city deal as well. But the future for the Territory is about making sure that we have that solid economic development. You cannot just have social, you have to have that economic balance. So it is about the development of Middle Arm, the development of the shiplift in the Northern Territory, the development of a rare earths industry in the Northern Territory, an onshore oil and gas industry as well. But it is about doing the good things that need to be done. So the work around social housing, affordable housing as well in the Northern Territory. And as I said, that will be a priority of our government. But you'll still see the beautiful things. The CDU campus will be open very soon. Atsiaga, which is the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Art Gallery of Australia, will be built in Alice Springs. The Northern Territory Art Gallery will be built in Darwin, and it's coming out of the ground. We have done the work through the city deal to make sure that we have a vibrant, beautiful Darwin CBD. So our big picture infrastructure is having that solid pipeline, that plan and pipeline of work. The work that the Infrastructure Commission has been able to do for the Territory provides that roadmap for the future for the Territory. So whether that's health centres or police stations or more schools, we'll continue to deliver infrastructure across the Territory.
Thank you, Eva. I'll now direct the same question to Leah, and I will ask it again. So what will be the big picture vision of infrastructure for your government to ensure livability and environmental and economic sustainability for all Territorians?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I wanted to talk in this question, sorry, I've been battling this ridiculous cough for about 3 weeks. I wanted to answer this question by talking about hope and aspiration, because that's what the CLP and that's what a government I lead will deliver for the Territory. We know we've had a Labor government for 19 of the last 23 years, or the last 8 years in a row. And while there's a lot of talk around infrastructure and biggest budgets and ship lifts and all of these things, there's been very little by way of delivery. Now, if Defence wasn't here in the Territory, probably many of you would be wondering what exactly it is that you're working on. But I stand here before you so excited and optimistic about the future, because I know the Territory can be better. And so our vision for infrastructure, but every other facet of the Northern Territory, is about rebuilding. It is about rebuilding the Territory. And to do that, we have to reduce crime. We have to restore our lifestyle. We have to give people more reasons to stay here and stop our friends and family from leaving. And that's why our focus is a lot of the time on things like creating better powers for police, dealing with consequences for crime and the root causes of crime, and making sure that we have appropriate rehabilitation services and that we're dealing with those pointy-end issues. Because what's relevant to all of you is that we talk about placemaking, we talk about infrastructure, we talk about all of the things that makes the Territory a beautiful tropical city, or the tropical city that we dream about having for the future. But we can't have any of those things if those public spaces are not safe, if those public spaces cannot be utilised by our community and people don't feel free to be able to enjoy that lifestyle. And I think with John John's Ice Cream closing in the city, that really epitomises everything that's wrong with the Territory at the moment. When you can't take your kids into town to get an ice cream, we have a serious problem. But there's so much opportunity to turn that around, and we have a strong plan to deal with law and order and those root causes of crime. But our lifestyle is critical. It's why we live here. And when 868 Territorians moved interstate in the first quarter of this year, my heart broke. That's nearly an entire suburb of Territorians that packed up and left. They didn't see a future for themselves or their families here anymore. And as a generational Territorian and a migrant family, my grandparents migrated here from Italy in the 50s. I don't want to see other families and my peers who were born here and their families were born here packing up and going because they don't see a future for their children. So I wake up and fight every day for a stronger territory, a territory that's safe. And I ask everyone to ask yourselves, is life better now than it has been in the past? Are you getting better health care? Is the hospital more reliable than it was a few years ago? Are the streets safer? Are our police well supported? Are projects that are being talked about actually being delivered? And our focus is about exactly that. It's about delivery and making sure we rebuild the territory together.
Thank you. We'll now head into the series of the questions, and I will ask Leah to respond first.
Okay.
The series of questions are related to, the first two series of questions are related to climate resilience. So the first question is, what policies will your government introduce to reduce ongoing energy costs through better building design and to assist building owners in retrofitting existing buildings for energy efficiency?
This is a great question, and it, of course, is a question of balance, because we know it's easy for people to sit around and talk about what should be happening, what codes should be like, where we can improve things and make things more energy efficient. But at the end of the day, and I was talking to a group of you earlier, your industry is about someone starting with an idea and then a tradie at the other end implementing the idea. And along that way is this vast linkages of people. It's the architects and the engineers and the designers and all of you in this room pulling that what started as an idea together. But we have to always have in mind the consumer at the end of that long line of people as well. And we know that housing approvals are the lowest they've ever been. Master builders have said we're on track for worst home building here in the territory. And that's alarming. It's not only reflective of the fact that people are leaving, but people don't have confidence to invest and bed down their lives here. So it's easy to talk about energy efficiency and have great aspiration and big targets, but if people can't afford those homes or those buildings, they just won't happen. And then none of us prosper as a result of that. Something that we're really focused on, of course, under this government, the feed-in tariff for solar was pulled out, the rug pulled out from underneath people, and this government promised people that they would grandfather them onto the old feed-in tariff scheme only a year later to break that promise. And so we've recognised that people under successive governments have been encouraged to invest in rooftop solar only to be left with a 9 cent a kilowatt rebate. And so we are going to double the battery bonus to $12,000, which will get a normal size house. That is almost enough battery to get people off the grid. And we would double the feed-in tariff during peak times to reward people who go green in their homes.
Thank you very much. Eva, same question. I will repeat the question. What policies will your government introduce to reduce ongoing energy costs through better building design and to assist building owners in retrofitting existing buildings for energy efficiency?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I could speak for 3 minutes to rebut most of the things that Leah said, but I won't do that. I will talk and answer the question because I don't think Leah actually answered that question either. But I think, first of all, around the planning scheme, we have done that work around interchangeable use, because we do need to make sure that our buildings that we have, our buildings that aren't in use, for example, NT House, we do need to make sure that there are opportunities for building owners to be able to modify, to change, to reuse those buildings. And so that will be some work that our government will do in our next term. As I said, that planning scheme provides that opportunity, but we want to see more of that. We need to see buildings that are being reused, recycled, upscaled, and we've seen that on a small scale with the Mansfield Street in Palmerston, and so which was a residential area, and we've got those into smaller uses with units, and but that work is one that needs to continue. The other one is around NCC, National Construction Code. Again, when you deal with the building industry as well, there has been pushback over the years around bringing us up to and in line with what is happening in other states. We have done some work around that. We have been pushing the NCC levels and making sure that we get in line with the rest of Australia. But that work needs to happen, as I said. So we do need to have our energy efficiency levels the same as what the expectations are elsewhere in Australia. In our remotes, so there's going to be $4 billion invested in our remote communities. I'm really keen to make sure that we see 7-star ratings for all of our houses that are being built in our remote communities. We need to have that. We need to have culturally appropriate housing. We need to have energy efficient housing in our remotes. There was a really big push, obviously, to get the number of houses built, and that we can understand, I think we all understand the absolute need for more housing in remote. And that first lot, that first $1 billion of housing, was about making sure we lowered the number of the overcrowding in housing in remote. I think now we can, with the next $4 billion, we can take a bit of a breather and we can actually look at more culturally appropriate, more energy efficient housing, particularly in our remotes. Selena Ubo, that's something that she's very passionate about. We've seen that work that's been happening in Tennant Creek around that. So again, it is about making sure that we actually do the work around energy efficiency for the whole of the territory. So our government brought in the work around Section J. That work had to be done. Again, sometimes there's pushback from industry around that, particularly the construction industry, but we'll continue to make sure that we look at energy efficiency, that we look at the issue of climate change, making sure that we have climate change, buildings that are resilient to our climate into the future.
And Eva, I'll direct this question to yourself first of all. In relation to urban green infrastructure, research shows that in the last 2 decades, Darwin has lost half its green canopy due to ageing and development. What will your government do to reverse this decline to improve the livability and sustainability in our capital city?
Yeah, I think this is one that can't just be the responsibility of government, or the Northern Territory government. We have to work in partnership with council, and we've done that very, very well. So you might have seen after Cyclone Marcus, there was a large number of trees that were removed that in the northern, particularly in the Greater Darwin area in Palmerston. We continue to invest in our councils, giving money to the councils, particularly Palmerston Council, Darwin City Council, where then they can put in more trees. And so that continues to be a focus of ours. And Darwin, I think City of Darwin and Palmerston have done a really good job. When we got in Roystonia Avenue, as you drive into Palmerston, Temple Terrace, there were no trees, there were just dusty verges there. We've been able to do that work. We've seen Con and his team do a really good job around Daly Street Bridge there. Garramilla Boulevard, when I became Infrastructure Minister, I said that's going to be the most beautiful entrance to our city. I want us to make sure that we do the work, and so the porcelainite, the trees, and my dream was to have those trees just like on Gardens Hill Road, where the rain trees cover the road, and that's starting to happen. So as Infrastructure Minister, I know Joel has the same vision. We need to make sure that when we do that, the infrastructure in the territory, when we put in our roads, that we do that, the greening work around that. The dream is also to have the green belt going from the waterfront to Cullen Bay. So you can see Kavanagh Street, and I know Leah doesn't like the shade structure, and I know Gerard Maley kicks me every sittings about the shade structure, but I love the shade structure. It's a beautiful bit of architecture, but the rest of Kavanagh Street is absolutely stunning as well. And we have given council the money to do the next section from the Rainbow Crossing to Woolworths, as well as that next section of Kavanagh Street. So it's about government investing in council. They can do the work around that, but that is my absolute dream. I'm a born and bred Territorian. I absolutely love the tropical city of Darwin, but it is about having that link between the waterfront and Cullen Bay, fully greened all the way, so people can ride their scooters and they can be in the shade. So it's around working with council. Darwin Council has that greening strategy as well. The work with the Darwin Living Lab, again, I get criticised for spending $80,000 on research, but decisions have to be based on research. So $80 million, I think, to CDU around doing the research around the work around heat mitigation in the CBD is really important work. So we'll continue as a government to green, and whether that's our roads into the CBD, work with council around more trees and planting more trees across the length and breadth of the Northern Territory. But I think it's something that we all want to see. we come here and we stay here because of the tropics, and we love that about the Northern Territory. We love that about Darwin. I won't talk too much around Alice Springs, but we've been doing similar work in the Alice Springs CBD as well.
Thank you very much. Leah, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. So this is a really critical issue, and everyone who's been around long enough will know after Cyclone Marcus, we lost a huge portion of that tree canopy, and there's been concerted effort to get that back. I think it's very important, not just for greening and cooling, but actually for livability. And livability is a very important point to my team and I, because again, we're talking about having a population of people very uncertain about whether or not their future is in the Territory. And so making somewhere home is critically important. And to do that, that's where a lot of this supporting an outdoor lifestyle and a tropical lifestyle is so important. And so it's not just green canopy, it's also hard canopy too. And yes, the shadeless shade structure is not that shady, but I'm sure together we can find a solution to those vines that aren't quite cut out for reaching the top of the structure. But it's bigger than that, and so we certainly support councils. I know City of Palmerston, for example, if you want a tree, they will give you one, and that's underpinned by government. So they're really important initiatives. People need to know that they've got access to not only be planting in their neighbourhoods and their backyards, but when we're designing, those green belts are really important. And I've had the privilege over the last 12 years that I've been a Member of Parliament that I've always had a new development in my electorate. So I've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of developers over that time, and I've seen firsthand how they're working with council, how they're working with community in the development of green belts and parks. So that continues to be an important theme that I see, but one that we will support even further. So is that my first bell or second? First, okay. Off I go.
Keep talking.
I think one other issue is around water security. And so whilst we have this massive ambition to continue to green the Territory, water security continues to be an issue. And I know in Palmerston, for example, and I'm sure City of Darwin are the same, we're seeing sprinklers being turned off, grass and parklands left to deliberately dry out over the dry season so that we're conserving water. Now that's obviously important and smart, and I can understand why they're doing it. But we also need to be underpinning our future water supplies and how we're supporting councils to continue to green our communities. Because those of you with small kids, like I have, know it's very difficult to take your kid to the park when the grass is dead and there's rocks, and it becomes unpleasant. And so we've got to, again, find that balance, but we're very, very focused on making sure that councils are well supported. Because at the end of the day, that's really in their paddock. It's really something for councils, those green spaces, and making sure then that government is adequately funding and supporting initiatives to continue, again, to achieve the aspirations of the community around livability, and working with groups like Landcare, for example. They've just done a great partnership with the Airport Development Group, and it's through those community grassroots. I know in my electorate we have the Mitchell Creek Green Association who are doing wonderful work supporting Mitchell Creek Green, and so it's being conscious of our environment and how we plan forwards to utilise it. Thank you.
Now, I'll direct this question firstly to yourself, Leah.
Yes.
Design quality was a theme that came up quite strongly through our members' interaction, so this question relates to that. For industry to support large government developments, would your government support a local advisory architectural positions similar to the previous government architects, but being an experienced local with sound knowledge of the requirements and challenges of the Northern Territory?
Thank you. I found this question very interesting because it's actually the first time anyone's from this industry has asked me about this. Of course, it was a CLP government that brought in the architect, and it was the Labor government that got rid of them. Certainly no plans to increase bureaucracy where it's not required, but I think the breadth of experience we have across the Territory speaks volumes for itself. So whether it's a government architect, I don't know. I'm happy to have that conversation with all of you if I get the privilege to govern the Territory after August. But what I know for sure is that we have incredibly experienced Territorians who have a lot of value to add. I think how many of you, and particularly the public servants in the room, have heard of government ministers getting on a plane, they get elected, they go straight to Singapore, they look at all the bougainvillea hanging off buildings in Singapore, they come back, oh, we're going to hang all these trees and all this rubbish talk ends up coming back and it never ever happens, right? So I think what we can do a lot more of is actually looking in our own backyard, utilising the experiences that we have in the Northern Territory itself and actually delivering outcomes for Territorians by Territorians. We can all glean great ideas from around the world, and Singapore is an incredibly beautiful tropical city, don't get me wrong. But I think these experiments that we continue to think the grass is greener somewhere else doesn't have to be the case. And if we're proud to be Territorian, and if collectively we have the experience about what works and what doesn't work, then why shouldn't we be leaning in on ourselves and drawing in on that experience? So it's not a flat out no, it's certainly not a yes. I think that's a conversation to be had into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Eva?
Well, I'm going to say yes. So this one has been, as I said, and Leah, yes, we've been asked many, many times. Probably, I think every time I meet with the Architects Institute, I get asked this question.
Well, they haven't asked me.
Rossi, don't laugh. But it has been one that, as I said, the previous architect that we had, and when we did talk about it was, let's have a bit of a break, let's have a bit of a look at all of this. And so, I mean, we have put in the design panel, the architect's design panel, I think it is. I think that was in 2022, 23. So there is that architect's design panel. And as I said previously, we do invest a lot of money, which is absolutely appropriate, particularly when you're building national art galleries in the Northern Territory. We've invested a lot in our architects, so about $65 million in the Northern Territory. I also made sure that the DCA has architectural positions on the DCA as well, which I think is really important. The other one is we upgraded the Architects Act. I think it hadn't been upgraded since 1963, and I will have a bit of a go at the CLP because they told me that it was all we're doing was tweaking around the edges and it was only administrative and it didn't even go to consideration in detail, which just shows absolutely no interest by the CLP in that architect legislation, which was vitally important. And again, Rossi and Jenny probably had hassled me and Raquel every meeting that I had. And I can say that I met probably quarterly with when I was the minister for those 5 or 6 years that I was minister, and Jenny will back me up, and Rossi, that I absolutely met and kept those meetings with the architects, and they were very, very valuable meetings. So even though we haven't had that architectural position that's been filled, that principal architectural position that's been filled, I have always been able to, as the minister, I'm sure Joel Bowden does now, get really sound advice around from the committee, the Architects Institute's committees from the executive. But again, and the other one that they've lobbied hard around is a Masters at CDU around that, and that we're getting there with that. So I can hear you, I understand around that position. I don't know if it's full-time. That's the other issue. It would have to be an executive level position, obviously to reflect the qualifications, but more than happy to have those conversations. But I would love to see it, to make sure it's a territory person, somebody who understands the complexities. I know I use that word often, but the complexities of the territory. We have got a big build, so federal government, 11,430 houses need to be built in the territory, so it doesn't necessarily have to be all the fancy and flary and airy things. It is also around those real grassroots hard slog that we need to do around housing. And I have sought advice and had that advice from the Housing Alliance as well. Some of you have been on the Housing, Ashwin, on the Housing Alliance as well. So I think most of you know, as a minister, whichever portfolio, I seek advice from the people, the experts, and I listen carefully to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Eva. And this question is directed back for first response. Again, another key theme that came up from those in the room was around public and social housing, and the next two questions concern that. So what do you see as the future of public housing in the Northern Territory, and what would your government do differently to improve it?
Yeah, so this one is a really, really important question in the Northern Territory. We have a large number of people in the Northern Territory that rent, and whether that's social housing, affordable housing, people with disability, and you all know the story around remotes and how substantially we are in catch-up mode around our remotes. So the federal government's committed, and we're committed to 11,430 more homes in the Northern Territory in the next 5 years. That's a lot of homes. So it's 1,492 social affordable homes, 1,270, I think it is, remote homes as well. So there is a lot of work to do around social and affordable homes in the Territory. As I said earlier, I would like to see, and some of them are, I think at Millakarpiti recently we just opened 7 homes or handed over the keys to 7 homes, and I think 5 of those were 7-star rating. But I think now's the time around our social and our public housing to do a few things. One, it's around making sure that they are energy efficient, and so that 7-star rating. But the other one is around solar and renewables. So one of the things, and Leah talked about the feed-in tariff, the feed-in tariff had to change because it was around the stability of the grid and maintaining the stability of the grid. The feed-in tariff in the Territory was the highest one-to-one in Australia. Nowhere else had that feed-in tariff. We had to bring it down. I was a minister that made that decision, but it had to be because I've been the renewables, I've been the energy minister. We've got a small grid, we need to maintain the stability of that. But that money that we saved from that, and that hasn't been clear and spoken about by the CLP, has been put into projects around how do we get energy efficiency, how do we cut the power bills for some of our poorest people. So the feed-in tariff was giving, and probably a lot of us, giving cheaper power bills to middle-class people in suburbia who owned their own home. The concerns I have is the people renting in Palmerston, the people renting in Karama, the people in our remotes who are the poorest Territorians are paying the highest power bills. So some of the people in my electorate of Maldon with 4-bedroom homes are paying $1,200 a quarter power bills. And the schemes that we have, the battery scheme that Leah's talking about doubling, does not help those people. So Labor values, I'm a Labor politician, my Labor values is what can we do around people in public housing. So you'll see us announce a project called Sun Booster, and that Sun Booster will be a trial on some of our public housing in the Northern Territory. How do we get community batteries? How do we get solar on our housing for our poorest people? The other one is around body corporates. How do we get solar also for people in units that are renting across the Northern Territory? So that one is really important to me. So there was about $8 million saving in the feed-in tariff, as I said, money going to people who could afford it, and it is instead going to be put into these trials and this work. There's work also in Alice Springs with the Alice Springs Future Grid project. The same thing. How do we get our poorest, most vulnerable Territorians who are living in public housing or who are renting to be able to access solar? And so solar, as well as say making energy efficient, is I think the 2 most important things for public housing in the future.
And Leah, we welcome your response.
Thank you. I think to start with, we're not building enough of it. And again, going back to my local member experience with Zicoli or Durack Heights or Northcrest, whatever it might be, we know that going forward, government says, okay, you need to have a percentage of public housing. But what I'm seeing is just very small units, often for seniors in very small clusters. We know there are about 5,000 people on the wait list, and we know that wait list for a lot of Territorians is about 10 years. So it's a critical situation. We also know there are a lot of people in Territory housing that are abusing that opportunity to have a home and depriving other very vulnerable people of a home. And that is a separate issue that we will absolutely address as part of our law and order, as part of maintaining public assets and dealing with those issues. Because when we're out right across the Northern Territory, there is a lot of antisocial behaviour and other issues that are stemming from Territory housing. And our position is that people who are vulnerable and in desperate need, we have 5,000 people who would cherish the opportunity to put a roof over their children's head. In my view, they're the people we need to be prioritising for public housing. And we need to be building more of it. And it needs to be interdispersed in the suburbs that we're building. Something else we're very, very keen on, and I thank the Property Council, I don't know if they're here this evening, but it's something they've been working on a lot, is around how we can repurpose vacant commercial buildings. We have a huge number of vacant commercial buildings in the Darwin CBD, and of course to activate the CBD, drive down crime, antisocial behaviour, we need people there. And our CBD needs more people. We've got a new university building with no student accommodation. And so we have already committed, I think I made this commitment last year, or maybe it was the year before, to follow the road that South Australia has taken about having a bespoke planning pathway and approvals process for people converting those vacant commercial properties into shorter term accommodation. And there's no reason why. We've got our sights set on student accommodation, but there's no reason why that couldn't apply to public housing as well. We've got to be activating our spaces, we've got to be repurposing those buildings, and we've got to be giving the construction system, of which you are a part of, the pathway to get that done more efficiently. It's just so prohibitive and uncertain at the moment for developers to be able to even contemplate taking that on. I know Venture Housing are doing a power of work in this space as well, and it's an absolute credit to them. And I know the federal government has a wide range of initiatives that in the Territory we're not necessarily capitalising on. So it's about drawing on all of the resources that are available to the Territory to deliver that wide range of offering. But it's very, very important to me and my team that we are getting people into homes. If you give someone a home, they have an opportunity to get a job. They can hold down work. They can send their kids to school. It is a very important part of growing the Territory moving forward. And that's also why we've committed to making sure we get more Territorians. Is that one or two? One? Two. Okay, I'll talk about it later. I'll weave it into the next one.
Yes, very good. So on that theme, Leah, first right of response for this. Similar question, but more specific to remote Indigenous communities. What will your government do to provide better housing options and integrate good planning for remote Indigenous communities?
Thank you. Okay, so I'll finish what I was going to say. So that's why we're also focused on getting more Territorians into their own home, because if we can get people building new homes through our $50,000 home build scheme or our $30,000 scheme, which isn't for first home buyers, it's for anyone who has owned a home or owns a home who wants to build a new home and add more stock to the market. And we also have a $10,000 scheme for first home buyers who want to build an existing home. And we've done this very strategically and deliberately. Number one, we want to keep Territorians here. We want Territorians to downsize so that their family home can be put up for rent, again, supporting people who need it, or sold. And we want that churn through the system, and we need to add supply. It will stimulate construction and it will give confidence to people. It will also act as a beacon to people around this country who are struggling to, how on earth are you going to save for your first home if it's $1 million if you live in Melbourne or Sydney? Come to the Territory, get $50,000, build a home here, settle, and keep your life here. That's what we're focused on as a population growth strategy. Now, when it comes to remote, we've been very, very clear, and the point of difference between us and Labor couldn't be more different. You know, over a decade ago, Labor pulled the rug out of underneath Aboriginal communities by creating super shires. And we have seen a disempowerment in the bush of decision-making over that entire period of time. We have been very clear and responded to the calls from Aboriginal leadership right across the Territory, no matter where we go, that we need to make smaller community councils. We need to reduce the size so that we put more control, decision-making and financing back in the hands of the Aboriginal people who live there. And through that reform and process, we will get better outcomes when it comes to housing, because we need to be consulting better about what each community needs, what their demands are, in terms of how many, in terms of design. We've seen failed schemes, like when this government was building sheds onto the end of houses for people, and we've all seen those images broadcast throughout the NT News. Tip to you, Cam, nice to see you here. And so we can't have that continue going forward. So our view is that more control into communities by the people who are running their communities, having that demand for housing, they're better placed to be dealing with those issues than someone sitting in an office in Darwin saying, oh, I think we'll build a nice 3-bedroom house in Ramingidding, that'll look good. It's really got to be coming from the ground, and every community is different. And I don't need to tell you guys about, obviously, the weather in the Territory. It's 0 degrees in Alice Springs right now, and it's reasonably warm outside here. So all of those factors need to be taken into consideration. But for us, it starts with returning control to Aboriginal communities so that they have that elected decision-making at their level to have more power, make more decisions, and have more control.
Eva, your response, please.
I do have to rebut some of those. I was trying not to tonight, but I will have to because it shows a complete lack of understanding of the housing program in remote. So there's been almost 4,000 upgrades or new builds across the Northern Territory with our $1 billion. Leah, we have housing reference groups in those communities. The housing reference groups work very closely. I don't know if there's any Dipple people here, but you have just undermined the amazing work that they do, the hard work that they do around consulting out in those communities. But we have a local decision-making process in the Northern Territory, so our government has a local decision-making. I signed off on one very recently in Maningrida, and I also signed off one in Palumpa just last week, and very sad with the croc death in Palumpa today. But the community has a say around the design, the work that they want, the houses that they want, who will get houses. But as I said, there needs to be more work around that, because in the past we have been pushing to deliver houses around that. We know the issue around overcrowding, and so the decision was around always around making sure if you could get 2 houses instead of 1, we'll get 2 houses. So we will continue, and as I said, with the evolution and with Selena Ubo being the housing minister, we'll look at that culturally appropriate designs in our remotes. We'll look at also around having climate safe houses, but it is also around very much reducing overcrowding in our remote communities. We signed the next 10-year agreement, that $4 billion agreement, on July the 1st. So just that's that part of the question. But in relation to planning, agree totally. We do need to update our land use plans in our remote communities, and I was recently in Wadeye, and Wadeye have the Kardu Diminan, which is the traditional owners of Wadeye. They've had Fulcrum Agency out at Wadeye doing consultants there to do their land use planning across Wadeye. So Wadeye is a community that's growing. They need to have, just like in our urban settings, more detailed planning. So you know, where the cemetery is, where the brickworks is, where the next shops are going to be. So we're committed to making sure that we update those land use plans, particularly in our larger remote communities, our Natarias, our Wadeyes, Maningrida, Gallawinku, where we need to have that, because those are the places where we're seeing population increases as well. So it is about making sure we have the master plans and those plans for those remote communities. But again, it is about consultation and community engagement around that. So absolutely agree. You need to have people out on the ground, whether that's a consultant that facilitates it, but out there listening to the people on the ground, because they're the people who live in those communities long term. But our record around the delivery of houses, and Leah just dissed us and said tin sheds on the back of buildings or whatever, absolutely not, but it was around the Room to Breathe program, which is about putting additional rooms for people who have overcrowding in their housing.
Thank you. And the meal's arriving. We'll let you off the hook, and this will be our final question for the evening. It relates to the promotion of women in construction. Eva, to you first. So what initiatives will your government implement to promote more women in leadership and trade roles within the construction industry and address the gender pay gap?
Yeah, so this is one I'm very, very passionate about, and I'm very pleased to be the patron of Engineers Australia, the NT branch. We do need to see more women in industry, from absolutely the architecture, but all the way through to our tradies. And that's a cultural shift, and that can be supported by government, but it's also from industry. Some industries, and I've been in this area working as Minister in construction, and I've said that construction has actually lagged, and it's a big thing to say, but lagged behind the mining industry really with their workforce around women. So it does need to be industry that leads some of this, and as I said, and I might get myself in trouble, but I went to a couple of Master Builders awards nights, and I was appalled to see high-vis women that were dancing on stage. They were the act in high-vis gear, leotards, and flaunting their bodies. And I did say that to the President at the time. I said, there will be equity, and you'll get more people working in the building industry, in the construction industry, in the Northern Territory, when you have some tradies up there, some men up there in high-vis and skimpy gear or something else, because it is absolutely not suitable to have women in, skimpy little outfits. And that then flows on, that flows down into the industry, because then it is, and the women I talk to, not having separate women's toilets on work sites, the still having the wolf whistling, those sorts of things that are unacceptable in the 21st century on work sites. So it's one I'm passionate about. Our government will continue to support equity around women. As I said, we've got 2 women up on stage who I think are very supportive of that. But it is about making sure those avenues are open through training. So Joel, the free fee TAFEs, it's hard to say that one, free fee TAFE places, making sure that they are taken up by women, that women feel that they can be at CDU, at the Trade Training Centre there, that they're accepted, that they're embraced by the workforce there. Women in construction, so professional associations that support women, such as Women in Construction, the professional development days that they do, the support that government does around that, supporting women in construction. And we have amazing women in this room in that industry. And as I said, Jessie, I'll mention Jessie Riss with AKJ, who has just taken a big step up and got some big territory contracts, and is a Larrakia woman leading in the territory in that construction area. So we can do it, girls, in here. As I said, I was very proud to be a female infrastructure minister, and I don't think I ever felt any discriminated against or put down or anything like that in that industry. I come from a family that's involved with the trucking industry. My sister's the CEO of the trucking industry, and it's similar in that area. We need to see more women. When you're talking about a labour shortage, and that's the biggest issue we face in the territory, rather than jobs, it's about getting people. You've got 50% of the population that should be getting employed in your industries.
And Eva, final response for the evening.
Leah.
Thank you.
Another 3-letter word.
Leah. Sorry,
Thank
Leah.
I think it's a great time to be a woman in the territory. I think it's a really exciting time, and I know Women in Construction have done an incredible job in raising the profile of women achieving amazing things. Mary Linnell's here with us this evening, a trailblazer in the industry, and there are so many good stories. When I think of Women in Construction, I always think of Lindsay. She's won so many awards through the Women in Construction process, and it's not always about reinventing the wheel. We have strong organisations doing very good things. My focus is on supporting those people doing those good things and keeping the good things going. So often good programs fall over because a politician loses interest or looks to the newest, shiniest toy. It doesn't need to be the case that you reinvent the wheel every time. And so Master Builders have their Breaking Ground program. I know that Industry Skills and Charles Darwin University are doing work in this space. Obviously, Women in Construction, Group Training NT, Power Concepts. There are lots and lots of programs that I would be very happy to get behind because they're delivering real and tangible outcomes. Now, something I'm really focused on, and if we want our young women to have aspiration to enter into traditionally male-dominated industries, we need to be having a safe community for them to live in, and not just safe from crime, safe workplaces as well. And when I was a lawyer, I had the opportunity to represent a young female apprentice who'd been victimised in the workplace, and that was a real eye-opener to walk that journey or part of that journey with her. And so there's a long way to go, but there's so much opportunity. I'd rather look at this in a positive light about how much opportunity there is. Our payroll tax reform is a good way of putting your money where our mouth is in terms of getting more women into their own businesses and supporting more apprentices and trainees. So for the first time in 13 years, the CLP will lift the payroll tax threshold from $1.5 million in payroll to $2.5 million in payroll, which means more money back in your businesses. And the game changer is this: we will exclude all apprentice and trainee wages from that payroll tax cap, because we do not want tax to be the reason why you stop investing in the young people of our future. And we don't want tax to be the reason why you are falsely limiting the growth of your business. We want to back you every step of the way. And through payroll tax reform, we can meaningfully provide greater opportunity for women coming up through the ranks to start their own business, for existing employers to put on more apprentices and trainees. And we can start to change the narrative about the territory. Our payroll tax reform will be the most competitive payroll tax jurisdiction in this country. And you match that with our most competitive home building scheme, and you start to see where I'm thinking. I want the Territory to be the most competitive place to live, work and invest, and all of our policies are funneled through that prism so that we can rebuild the Territory together. Thank you.
And that now concludes the debate part of tonight's dinner and debate. Please join me in thanking both the Chief Minister and Opposition Leader. Thank you. So before you wander off, thank you so much for your time, your careful and deep and respectful thoughts around the topic at hand, and for sharing your respective visions for the infrastructure in the Northern Territory. Thank you. A reminder that not all questions were able to be answered this evening, but those not answered will be responded to in writing and circulated to those who asked them. Once again, big shout out. Thank you, Karen, for making my job very easy up here this evening. Thank you very much. And thank you also to Bondor Metechno for supporting the evening. Please don't forget to support those who support your institutes. Thank you.
Thank you.